Hey guys, so I've got Kanan and Curtis here all the way from somewhere in the US, and we're going to be talking about, I guess, finance and analytics and that kind of marriage, I suppose. Yeah, maybe it's worth just me kicking off a little bit. So everyone who's watching this probably knows that, Merchant Spring is an analytics product and all that kind of stuff, but it's probably worth, either you, Kanan, or Curtis just giving the audience a bit of an explanation of what Airwallex is, or we'll get into what it does, but like a little bit about what it is, a little bit of background.
I'll let you have it, Keenan.
Yeah, sure. I kick it off. Airwallex is a financial platform. We have a lot of sellers, e-commerce businesses who use us, but it's really meant for anyone who has a global payment need, typically. So moving funds globally efficiently. Really simplifying that process and making it easier for businesses to expand, automate, and just really make global payments and global expansion affordable at the end of the day.
I see. Now, I've obviously pitched Airwallex to a bunch of people in the industry and all that kind of stuff. And I suppose how I pitch it to people is very different to what the marketing stuff says. Maybe really much more simple. So, can you tell us in really simple terms, what is the global account? I mean, I think you just mentioned it, and I know I use it, but what is that?
Yeah, so the global account is one of the kind of pillars of what we offer. We offer a lot of different types of features, but a global account is essentially a way to open up bank accounts in different regions around the world, but really kind of nested under one same entity. So if I was a business in the US, for example, I could say, hey, I'm going to sign up with Airwallex United States with my United States entity. Now I have the power to open up a global account in my name, an actual business banking account, in Australia, in Canada, Europe, UK, and a myriad of other regions. And what this does is it gives you, really kind of saves you a lot of time, effort, energy. Not having to fly to Australia to open up an account, pay money, things like that. You're able to really scale quickly and have that banking, in your name, globally from day one.
Okay, so in really practical terms, I mean, for me, and correct me if I'm wrong, I can literally go into Airwallex. I can say I need a bank account in the US, and at least from my experience, in 15 seconds later, I have a bank account in the US or whatever. Is that understanding correct, or is there a different way you would explain that?
In what it is really too, right? It's like the account is in your name, and you're right. It takes about, maybe, I tell people 5 seconds, but 15 seconds works as well. But no, no, but yeah, essentially, so this bank account is in your name in the United States or in Canada, wherever you're opening it. It's powered by Airwallex. So the way I like to explain it is, you can't, like, if you're traveling in the United States and you walk up to that bank and you're like, hey, where's my money? That wouldn't necessarily work. It's like Airwallex powering that bank on behalf of you. But the bank is still in your name and able to accept, local funds and USD, CAD, whatever, wherever you have that bank. But it's really kind of powering through our platform. So yeah, it's as simple as just logging in, opening the bank, and you can receive funds there the very next day or same day.
Cool. Well, I'm glad, because that's my Airwallex elevator pitch to anyone I meet who needs a foreign bank account.
Yeah.
Just on that, so reversing it, what are the pain points that actually solves? Now, you did list a few, like you don't have to fly to a different country. You don't have to, I guess you don't really have to deposit money to open the account. There's no KYC. Like, anything else there, or is there a long list of things that global account solves?
I think you kind of touched on a few of them, right? There's one, you don't have to have an entity in that country. So typically you might have to have an entity in Australia or the US if you're going to open up a bank account there. Sometimes different regions have different requirements. Like, you might have to have lived in that country for 6 months to open a bank account. Obviously, there's a cost as well of opening bank accounts. KYC processes for each. Whereas, like, with Airwallex, you go through a KYC process once, and, like, the world is your oyster kind of thing. So I think really just being able to act swiftly and nimbly, and, like, being able to just spin up these accounts as you quickly is going to be, and obviously at no cost is really important. I don't know if Curtis, you got anything else to add on that part, but.
No, I think ultimately, like, if we're talking to mostly e-commerce merchants here, this audience, right, and people who are selling products internationally, and if you don't sort of go through this process of opening up a bank account in a local market, Amazon is more than happy to, like, convert your funds for you, right? Let's say you're selling in the UK, and everyone's buying in GBP and the British pounds, And if you have, let's say, a US bank account connected to that Amazon UK account, Amazon will convert that to you so you can collect US dollars, right? But that's going to cost you, 2.5%, right? And then you might have to like send that money back out to the UK for your like through UPL, your translation service, your market agency, and that's another 2.5%, 3% from your traditional bank, and now you're at like 5 to 7% of your profit margin, right? And we just call that like sort of repurposing your funds, right? And we have different ways you can like send the money out without any sort of fees and costs. But it's really about like, hey, how do you like actually operate like a local? And if you were a local person living in the UK, you wouldn't have to worry about this sort of stuff, right? But because you're not a local, you're a US person trying to operate globally, these are the sort of things we solve for.
Get it. Okay. And then I guess shifting gears a bit. So that's what you solve, that's what it is. But then how does it actually work? Like, I know I've got my understanding of how it works. And I mean, when I ask that question, I mean, I'm logging into my Airwallex account. And this is kind of what we do. Like we see, okay, USD balance, GBP balance. Like talk us through like how does that work, or is it easy? What does it look like?
Yeah, so I'll take that one. I mean, we pretty much have made dozens, if maybe over 100 now, banking partnerships around the world. So you don't have to, right? So that's kind of how this all works. Like and one of our primary partners here in the United States is JP Morgan Chase. So they're, obviously holding and kind of managing all the US funds in the United States. But as you are opening up accounts and managing wallets, in these different currencies within the platform, different banking partners might have, be responsible for different parts, whether that's like the global account feature, maybe you're transferring something in a local currency, sending something via ACH, you might use a different banking partner with that, but it's nice to have the flexibility and kind of just the partner ecosystem of all these banks to really offer this one kind of hub where you can move money globally really easily.
Yeah, and I guess if I'm thinking about a mutual customer we've got here, like there's many of them, mutual Merchant Spring Airwallex customers. They all talk about like they needed to set up a UK, they're a US business, need to set up a UK bank account. It takes all of 5 seconds, as you said, Kanan. But is there anywhere that doesn't work? Like, obviously, it's really seamless for a whole range of scenarios. But like, for example, if I wanted to set a bank account in Malaysia or Indonesia, or if I'm a Singaporean entity and I want to do a bank account in Australia, like, can you give us a couple of examples where maybe it doesn't work now, but it's going to work in the future?
Yeah, I mean, we're always expanding our coverage, and there's different, currencies and countries where we support for different things, right? So we have the ability, for example, to pay out to 150 countries. So that's a really large chunk of countries, right? We can actually move money around the globe quite easily. And within those 150, there's like 90 local currencies we support. So, we can like move money via local payment rails with it's like, ACH in the US, for example. And all over the world. And then for our global accounts, specifically talking about those, we have those in, I believe, about 15 or 16 different regions right now, and that's growing. But like, for example, if someone wanted to open a bank up today in Mexico, for example, we don't have that live yet. But that is on the roadmap and coming soon. So there's definitely places where we're expanding our coverage. We're making a pretty big imprint into. I mean, we have already quite large in the APAC region, but we made a pretty big move into Latin America this year, which is quite interesting, and going to be able to open up banks in Brazil and Mexico and a few other regions as well for coming on the roadmap.
Interesting. So just on that, I know you were just in Japan recently. What's the newest kind of market that the Airwallex is operating in, just for interest's sake?
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's funny you mentioned that because we are officially launching in Japan. So we have the ability to have Japan, like JPY accounts. We have transfers. We have actually a really great infrastructure over there. But we do have a team that's going like an official launch in Japan, the end of Q3, early Q4. So that's going to be, right now we have different regions kind of supporting that infrastructure, but we'll have a dedicated team in Japan. And I believe, Curtis, correct me wrong, I think there's like we're kind of doing a big push into the Middle East as well. We just launched a team out there. So we're, really expanding our coverage and trying to, get infrastructure set up, not just from, other regions supporting like, Hong Kong or, we like today our Hong Kong team will support certain regions, but we want to actually have like boots in the ground, relationships built with the banking partners in those regions.
Right. I think we just launched an office in Israel, like, a couple months ago. I think Denmark collections and banking just went live, right, this past week, as been beta for a little while. So like, I mean, I would say like probably in the last like 3 or 4 months, we've added 3 or 4 new countries where the collections are live, right? So it's never going to stop, basically, right? Our CEO and our leadership team pretty much mandates like we have global coverage because that's what you need, right? We don't want to have to educate. We're like, oh yeah, I really want to do this in this country, and we can't support it. That's just not going to happen here.
Yeah, I can see that. Must be a Melbourne thing. So with such a broad customer base, like, do you have a unified story as to why sellers love Airwallex, I suppose? Like, you've got obviously customers all around the world, but is there a central narrative that just paints a picture of why they love you?
I mean, should we start with the origin story, Curtis? I mean, that's kind of where I was going first. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that.
I mean, yeah, that kind of works, right? At least it sets a table for like who we are, what we do. So go for it.
I mean, yeah, I just feel like the origin story kind of tells a little bit of like why we're here. So I mean, and you might even know this too, James, but essentially our CEO and kind of part of our kind of founding team actually started a coffee shop in Melbourne about 8 or 9 years ago, potentially almost 10 years ago. And one thing they noticed when they started this coffee shop is they were ordering cups and coffee and things from different regions. Maybe it's from China, maybe it's from other regions. They were ordering coffee from other regions that were like selling coffee, and they kind of pinpointed an issue with like the supply chain and kind of how difficult it was to move money around the world globally and to actually get the supplies that they wanted on time and like affordably, and kind of like being able to make those relationships with people in other regions around the world. So that's where they kind of had this idea to spin up a financial platform that was really connecting the world from a banking and financial perspective. So kind of going into like why people love us, it's obviously just we're trying to make global companies like their operations easier. At the end of the day, I think it's a little bit of an antiquated system, with bank, kind of old school banks kind of moving money through old, archaic systems like Swift messaging, like the Swift network. So really trying to just make things easier and kind of more simple for businesses who are going global or already global and kind of expanding from there.
Interesting. So there's always a coffee shop central to a Melbourne story. Always seems to be the case. Just on like simplifying, do you think that the simplification of financials and banking and being able to do business in other countries more easily and so on and so forth, do you think that that's really helped with profitability of a lot of businesses? Like, I'm changing gears here, but obviously Airwallex is not a cost-saving thing, but maybe it's an opportunity thing. Do you get that sort of feedback?
Yeah, I mean, really, you're expanding your market, right? You're being able to tackle a new set of customers. I do think there's like generally when you're going to go expand, there's a little more complexity that comes. We can't help with everything, right? There's new taxes you're taking on. There's kind of new compliance and regulations and selling your product into new markets, and you need to make sure everything is right from like a even like a logistics perspective. But we're trying to make things simple on the financial side, make things affordable as well. And I think just generally, if you can succeed in a new market, you can double, triple your customer base quite easily.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, look, I mean, I've got obviously a lot of insight from Merchant Spring about the complexity of profitability. Different marketplaces have Amazon as an example has 120 different revenue and expense lines, I think, and contra revenues and contra and expenses. And, I guess making the finance side of it, the banking side of it, just easy, lets them focus more on expanding and actually making the money.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my next point. So we're launching this sort of partnership, right? Where we're giving out an analytics tool in partnership with you, which is going to help with profitability. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how that works?
Yeah, I can go there. So yeah, just so everyone knows, I'm Curtis. I'm on the partnership at Airwallex. Just properly introduce myself here. And Airwallex is really great at sort of the banking and the infrastructure and making sure you can quickly expand to a new market, and making sure you're not like burning money, converting funds back and forth, and all those sort of things we're really good at, right? And giving you cash back on your card spend, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all that fun stuff, right? But one of the things that we hear from our clients is like, hey, it is complex to manage 2 or 3 or 5 different marketplaces, right? It is actually quite hard to like track inventory in this sort of way, and just track how much I'm spending on my ads, right? And just for full transparency, like me and James have been, Merchant Spring's been a partner of ours for like over a year now. And it's one of those things where like, I wish we built it, right? I wish Airwallex built this tool because it just makes a lot of sense, right? Where, in my head, Airwallex helps you with all the financial back office stuff, and Merchant Spring helps you with all the front office stuff, right? Merchant Spring tells you where you should go, where you should double down in, where you're making money, where you're hopefully not losing money, where not losing too much, where you can fix it, where the challenges are. And so, Merchant Spring will help you grow, and we'll make sure we're helping you, stay sane in the backside, right? And not leaking money out the backside of your revenue.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, look, I think it was also just to build on that. There was enough mutual customers that kind of suggested that it also made sense, like they're using Merchant Spring to monitor what's going on underneath that settlement into that bank account. You know what I mean? So yeah, look, I guess that's enough from us, right? I know there's probably some questions that have come through from your side. In the 4 minutes we've got left, I think we should go those questions.
Yeah, I mean, because I think generally speaking, right, and maybe your customers know this, but as we're announcing this partnership, right, I think, what do you sort of see e-commerce merchants do that sort of like says, hey, wow, this Merchant Spring solution is great? Because I know it's great. I've heard from our joint customers it's great, but sort of what do you see as like the typical like, oh, wow, Merchant Spring's amazing, I'm never leaving this product again? Why do they log back in like every day, to your tool?
Yeah, I think the answer like varies depending on where that merchant is. But if I think back to, to customers that are like based here in Melbourne, as an example, they would have like maybe 15 marketplace accounts. Like they'd have Amazon US, UK, Australia, probably sometimes all of them, like every single one. And they may have eBay, Shopify, I don't know, and Walmart, right? One simple thing for them is, well, Merchant Spring would let them see all of those channels in one kind of, literally in one card. So they log in and go, okay, I want to see month to date, 1st of July, 27th of July. And it'll just say the total figure across all your sales channels is blah. And then here's the breakdown. I know that doesn't sound all really sexy, but it's actually a difficult question to answer. Like the alternative is you go and log into US, and then you go and log into AU, and then you log into your eBay, and then you kind of sum it all up on, I don't know, like Excel or whatever. So that's like a key thing that a lot of people just, it's a massive time saver, and you go from being blind to being able to see everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very similar to what we hear too, right? Like, if you're not using an Airwallex like solution, you have a US bank and an actual UK bank, and like you have like 13 different bank accounts in different markets, and just to like rebalance it, you're actually wiring money back and forth to yourself, right? Which is just like nonsense. You're not just like, oh, like I'm gonna just send money to myself on my Airwallex account. No, I'm sending money from my UK physical bank to my whatever bank, and that needs like 4 different authorizations and all sort of stuff, and it just becomes really painful. So that totally makes a lot of sense. Great. And then, another question, right? So, so on your product, right, product roadmap, right? People who sort of like know what Merchant Spring does already, but what can they look forward to, from the product itself and possibly from the partnership as well?
I don't know how to answer that question, man. So I think the things that I can say is definitely enhancements to advertising. So obviously, if you've got Amazon or whatever it is marketplace you're selling on, where the industry is going is we're seeing like more activity in the advertising space outside of Amazon, maybe through display networks like Criteo, CitrusAd, or through things like Facebook or TikTok, bringing traffic ultimately back to an Amazon listing or a Shopify listing or whatever it is. So our roadmap is going heavy in that. So like you'll be able to connect many different types of advertising channels and be able to kind of track that financial performance there, back to the actual product or the sales channel that you have. I think on the other side of the roadmap, we're also doing more connectors. So, we've launched this year Mercado Libre, and Magento and BigCommerce, and a bunch of different things in Europe like Bol and Blocker and all these like Dutch marketplaces. But we will just go harder at that. So that just means this year, it's probably in the tail end will be more about 1P channels like Walmart 1P, got Walmart 3P, but more Walmart 1P, and then Asia. So like Rakuten, Shopee, Lazada, those sorts of things. So yeah, 2 streams, connectors, advertising functionality. That's the next 12 months.
Very, very cool. I'm glad we're partnering and not going against you. So I guess I can just, we're like another minute or two here, right? I'll wrap it up a little bit. So just to be perfectly, if you like what Airwallex is saying, like what James is saying on Merchant Spring side, we are launching this partnership, right? And the partnership is actually like you will get through Airwallex a Merchant Spring account for free, as long as you sign up to be an Airwallex customer, right? And you're getting like all the bells and whistles, all the feature sets that that Merchant Spring has, that James has, when you sign up, for an Airwallex account, right? And you transact, and we'll make sure you're in good standing and all that stuff. But it's very low thresholds here, and we're really excited about this partnership because of the vision I sort of like announced earlier, right? Where you can sort of get the growth from one side and the savings on the other side, and together it should be create a very valuable value proposition for you. So we do have a link. I don't know where to share this link with you now that I think about this.
Well, I think everyone will get this. Just everyone listening now will get a link to the recording, and
perfect.
Yeah, we'll include that link with it, man.
Yep, perfect. So there's gonna be a link. Click on the link, takes you to our site, right? Don't sign up for a Merchant Spring site, just sign up on our site for the Merchant Spring thing, because otherwise we won't be able to track it. And hopefully, you get a lot of benefits. And we're gonna be doing this a few more times, right, James?
Yeah, I think we'll try and do it. Maybe not with you, Curtis. No offense, but it'll be at least Kanan and I cycling through different kind of attendees and maybe mutual customers and users of both products and so on. So yeah, keep an eye out for it.
Perfect. Sounds good, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. See you next session.
Yeah. Thanks, James. See you next time.